I'm Jerika. I use she, her.
I'm Mazz. I use they, them.
And I'm Air. I use he, him.
You last.
Oh, and this is Inside Check, where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions to retrieve the treasure of wisdom.
It's true.
Hello. Welcome, one and all.
Oh, thank you for welcoming me.
I love that we're
problem.
still peddling the idea that we have wisdom between us.
Well, you know, fake it until you make
It's
it.
good to be optimistic.
Not make it like professionally, like actually create wisdom.
Down the wisdom farm, in the wisdom mine, mining away, chip, chip, chip at that wisdom.
1,000 monkeys on 1,000 typewriters are eventually going to write that poster about give me the whatever to accept the thingies.
You're talking about
Air, I have
serenity,
to
aren't you?
Tell you
Serenity
about
now.
something I did
Okay.
in a D&D.
Oh, I like that.
Maybe this is a dungeon crawl. I don't know. Listeners, you decide.
Let's crawl down in, and if we decide it's not, we'll crawl back out.
For sure.
It's going so well already.
So, I took some of my friends on a strange adventure to the Discworld.
Ooh.
And
I might be a friend. I might be a friend here.
it's true. Maz may or may not have been there. I cannot. They were. Anyway, so I was making like a little town that doesn't exist in the world. It was my own little town. And for me, it made a lot of sense to define the town by some like festivals that they had, annual festivals. One of the festivals in Olog is the Farm Wisdom recital and potluck.
Farm wisdom.
And it was very McElroy's to some extent. But anyway, there you go.
And someone that wasn't
Excellent.
me made an amazing haiku.
Yes, it's true.
And I can't remember who it was now.
Shout out to Wouter.
Oh, yeah, it was so good.
I might look that up while y'all are talking.
You got to play with Wout. That's been...
Yeah.
Oh, his character was
Wow.
He
awesome.
made a concession to stay up a little late, which was very nice of him.
I was going to say, yeah, the time zones there have always kind of... I've got him hooked. I think it was the Star Trek game he was interested in, but it was just the timing never worked out, so...
So one of the other festivals was the Festival of Glass, which was basically like the town celebrating that everybody gets new glasses every year. Because a gentleman would come to town and hawk some glasses, but they were good glasses. So Wouter, I'm going to read it, made this lovely haiku. Despite lack of glass, this festival sure did turn folks into lookers. So the Glass Festival was canceled this year in honor of a Farm Wisdom festival. And at the festival, for some reason, everyone became very beautiful very suddenly. So it was a very apt haiku. Thank you, Wouter.
Knowing nothing about Discworld, that sounds super Discworldy.
I think I did a good job.
It
I'm
was
sure you did. I wouldn't know.
super
I'm sorry.
fun.
Thank you. I'm glad it was
It
fun.
really was good fun. And I was just so proud of my stupid character name.
Share with the
Occasional
class.
table.
Yes. Yeah, occasional table.
Air, did you want to talk about worlds that you have brought to life?
Me?
Yeah, so I've heard that you are or either playing in or running another fantasy world that is being brought to life, Cortex Serenity.
Oh, yeah. Sci-fi-ish. So, yeah, our good friend Kate is running a Firefly/Serenity game using a system for such that came out kind of like the mid-2000s, right when like the Serenity movie dropped. And it uses a system called Cortex, which is from Margaret Weiss Productions, I want to say. So Margaret Weiss of like Ravenloft fame, co-authored that, and a fantasy novelist in her own right, and whatnot, had
Do you mean Curse of Strahd, or did she actually write?
She wrote the original.
yeah,
She wrote the
created-
original. Yeah.
Ravenloft.
Wow.
Because Curse of
Cool.
Strahd, like Barovia, is just a subsection of Ravenloft. There's loads of other
I see.
areas of it.
Yeah, created Straw and all of it. Yeah.
See, I'm not super into gothic horror, at least putting my brain in there, so I don't know too much about
No
it.
worries. Anywho, but had a game development company for a little while. And so they created this system, which I'm very much enjoying making a character for. It's got some neat bits to it, including the fact that it's classless. So
I have many questions.
you have many questions. Shoot.
I really want to make a joke about you having no class anyway.
I mean,
I didn't.
every
I just
joke
said I wanted
contains absolute truth.
Firefly / Serenity has a lot of very strong characters
Yes.
in the show.
Yes.
How do you, I suppose you might not know, but like you're not gonna be those characters. You
Well,
can be other
actually,
characters.
those characters are statted up in the book, and you can play them if you want.
Okay.
But if you wish to be on another boat out in the black, you can be. So the system.
So it's ship by ship, so like you're basically making a crew.
Making a crew, yeah, and making a ship.
That
The
makes
ship
sense.
itself is actually kind of a character in the system as well. But the thing that's really interesting about it is because like so many like D&D, obvious example, and almost every one of like the Powered by the Apocalypse games I've played, like I've recently played some Monster of the Week, they all work off of character archetypes baked into the classes. So you're a paladin or a wizard, or in Monster of the Week, you're a werewolf or a monster slayer or whatever. Kind of digging into the tropes of each of those genres. But this, instead of them being like, you're the pilot, you're the engineer, instead they take what would be like D&D's traits and flaws. They call them assets and complications. And they actually have, they're the first thing you pick about your character. So
That makes a lot of sense.
yeah, and they actually have mechanical elements to them, like they increase the die you roll for doing a specific thing. Like I'm looking at some of them here. There's like born behind the wheel, you learn to fly or drive before you learn to walk, blah, blah, blah. You know, some flavor text. And it increases the size of the die anytime you roll agility to control a vehicle or stuff like that. So you can pick all of these boons, and they're kind of like passive buffs about your character. Like they're an athlete, they're a fighter, they have a good name, they have friends in low places, things like that. And every boon that you take about your character eats into a point pool that you also use to buy your stats and whatnot. But for these specifically, if you buy complications, if you buy things that are kind of negative about your character, they offset the cost of all the awesome things that you bought. So there's kind of...
That is, there's a similar feature in Vampire the Masquerade as well. Flaws and the other one. But if you get, so like you can have some flaws to get some more good stuffs.
And I wanted to say, like, for every like D&D character I've made, inevitably the character concept has always stemmed from the class. Like things like backgrounds and even like race, I'm air quoting, you can't see that, it's a podcast, have always kind of been like, I would play an elf almost exactly the same as I would play an orc or a human or a dwarf. Like the accent might change because, again, tropes, but it never really factors in much for me. This is the first system I played in where I'm like, yeah, I really want to be like, I have this character concept and I'm starting to build things out of it. Like, oh yes, maybe there's an enemy in the shadows that is constantly following them because they're a traitor who's hiding out in the darkness of space, and like, oh, there's something for that. Yeah, and it allows the DM to like just interject your enemies showing up at an opportune time. Like, anyway, so yeah, I'm enjoying it, and I'm going to play it. I'm not sure when, hopefully soon, and gonna see how it goes.
Nice.
Oh, man, this is something I've been wanting to do for a while. I mean, we've been trying to get some time for a while to do this, haven't we? Because in the last couple of years of what we shall call high school, for the benefit of listeners, it's a different system over here, but it was about that age, I did language, linguistics, etymology, things like that, like as a course. And it's a real thing of mine. Like, I really love language and how people use it and how it informs a lot of things and where words come from. I'm always looking up where words come from. And, like, if I look at words and I can see their root and see... Because I also studied a lot of languages as well. So at school I studied French, Spanish, I've studied Russian, Swedish, Danish, Japanese. Is that everything? Yeah, not counting what I learned on Duolingo since. like
Klingon.
Yes, we're coming to that. So I know a lot about Romance languages. I can read a bit of Italian without even learning it because of how interlinked certain languages are. So it's a big thing.
Some of those cognates, though, they'll stab you in the back.
That's a very good Latin joke. I love it. Bravo. So I wanted to sort of dig into it with regards to doing homebrew, and a lot of people have trouble naming characters, naming places, naming things in their worlds. And I thought if we break down language a little bit and looked at it, it might give people some ideas. Creating a name or creating a culture in a world, because language and culture are very sort of like linked.
Mm-hmm.
Science fiction tells me so.
Yeah, so when you are sort of looking at naming things, you can consider, how the language is used, what sort of words they use, but you can also look at phonetics and syllable sounds, because those are what make a language sound very characteristic. Like if someone is speaking French, you can sort of often tell it's French, even if you don't know a single word, because of the rhythm, the cadence, the vowel sounds, some of the consonants used, they'll crop up a lot. And then it's the same with other languages, like Chinese has a certain sound because of the tonal system and the syllables they use. So with phonetics, we basically break it into consonants and vowels, obviously. Especially, I'm going to basically look at this from a point of view of English, because, that's our native tongue. That's what we've got most familiarity with. So a consonant is different to a vowel in how it's made. A vowel, you have your throat open, and a consonant, you close the throat. So the vowels are all like the ah sounds. And the 5 vowels we use actually cover 20 sounds in English, because there's long vowels, short vowels, and diphthongs. And we can break it down.
I saw a play about this. I think it was called My Fair Lady.
Spain is wet.
Spain is wet, but only in the
flat Spain is red.
The very flat areas, yes. Damp, very damp. With consonants, we can categorise consonants, and that will help us think about how to use these bits of language when sort of making up words. So consonants, you can have plosives, and with these it's really helpful because the first letter of plosive, P, is a plosive. It's the puff of air sound. So you've got B, P, T, D, G, and K. If you say K, it's not, but K is because you've got that puff of air. Fricatives. F is a fricative, to help you remember that. So you've got things like F, S, V, S. And it's that sort of blowing with your teeth sort of f noise.
Perhaps the one thing I learned while I studied abroad in Japan for a semester, we were sitting in class. We had class every weekday for the morning was basically language. And one thing that stuck with me is that in English, your F's do that, where it's f, you're expelling air. But we were taught that F's in Japanese don't do that as much. And there was the whole paper thing in front of your face. And when you say Fuji-san, you're not supposed to be Fuji-saning it. There isn't supposed to be as much air coming out. So it's almost like a softer F, Fuji-san.
Well, that's another thing that I will digress into briefly, is that
languages are different.
When foreign people learn English, often sort of certain countries have problems saying j or th. And the reason for that is, like, when we're children, we start to speak and develop words when our part of our throat migrates. So there's the flap that covers off the windpipe when you swallow. When you're a baby, that doesn't do that because babies can breathe and drink milk at the same time.
Wow.
But they can't talk because of it. So when that migrates, you start to learn sounds and words. But then after a certain age, I think it's like quite young, your vowel sounds are locked in. And you have a lot of trouble making different vowel sounds and learning them because they're not what you've spoken all your life. And it's part of like the anatomy of learning a language. It's so fascinating, seriously. I did so much stuff in this course, it was great.
It makes a lot of sense if you think about it.
There is a point to me rambling about these consonant types, which I will get onto with an example very shortly. There's a couple of other types. So nasal, so n is nasal, m.
I've been watching The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel constantly for the past
Same.
month, and so I thought you said nasal or maisel.
Yeah,
or nasal. Anyway,
they're very similar sounding, is it? But like as well. It's the ones you make like with your nose. So they go. That's what they call.
Nyan, it's the Nyan cat sounds.
Your illustration of these consonants is beautiful. I love it.
Jerika, the living PowerPoint.
There's like sibilants as well. So like S is a sibilant, Z, Sh, Z. So that's hissing. And then also you've got the trill, which is like the rolled R. I can't do it. I studied. That's it. That's the one. That's a trill. I studied Spanish. I could not do the R's. It was so embarrassing. But that's the one. So, to give you an example of why I'm saying this, I play a lot of World of Warcraft. Now, World of Warcraft is problematic, I acknowledge this, but that's not what we're talking about. But it's a good source for examining some of the things here. So, Klingon and Orcish in World of Warcraft. Klingon is like, I've been learning it for about a year now. And if you look at Klingons and Orcs, they're very warlike races. But then in their languages, they use like the harsh consonants, such as like the plosives, so like lots of t, k, g. So there's like mok, lok, laktuk. And Klingon sounds really, really similar because they use lots of like harsh consonants like that. Khatibach and things like that.
What'd you call me?
It wasn't aimed at you. It was an example, I promise.
Oh, okay.
So, as they're both like warlike races, and battle is important culturally. And like the orcs in Warcraft use a lot of words like blood, battle, blow, crush in their vocabulary. And so that paints the picture of bloodshed, violence, dominance. And the sounds of the language are like forceful and like, you know, like it sort of kicks you in the ear with those short syllables.
And short, sort of well-defined syllables can be useful, you know, in fraught situations where you have to communicate clearly to other people.
Exactly, and it's quick as well, quick communication. Whereas another example from World of Warcraft are the Night Elves, which are seen as a very peaceful race. And their language has a lot of long vowels and soft consonants. So they'll say things like Elune and Astronar.
Lunanare Delanar.
Yeah, Alubalore Delanar. Salama Ashalanore.
I've clicked on a lot of Night Elves.
Amora Masamad, Amada Samada Samant, or whatever.
Yeah, so if you listen to like the orcs are going blood and thunder and Loktaroga, and that sounds very aggressive. And then you've got the elves. Yeah, so if you compare like the Orcish Loktar against the Elven Andu Falador, they're both a battle cry, but the Elven one is like all long and soft sounding.
Which is also, like, if you think about it, that's also, like, culturally, like you said, language is very tied to culture.
Yeah.
A soft, sort of almost lyrical battle cry could have a very specific meaning, right? So it's like, we're gonna scare you with our calm calculatedness.
Exactly, like
Look out.
elves live a really, really long time, so they've got time to think about things and say things more slowly. Whereas like orcs live like really short and violent lives.
But they didn't always, Mazz. They didn't always. Lest we forget.
So, yuan ti, for example.
Sure.
So that's actually got some phonetic thought behind it as well.
Like names?
Yeah,
or...
if you can think of some yuan ti names, I've got some written down.
Yeah, Sylarcy has.
Yeah, exactly. So Mershulk, their god, is also known as Seth, which is like, it's those sibilants. It's like a snake sound. There's like Ras Nasi in Tomb of Annihilation. There's one, I've written this down because I was doing some research just before we started recording. There's this one called, let me see if I can say this, Stulk Sarm. So again, that's got that noises in.
And a cool nose noise at the end because snakes also have noses. Yay.
So yeah, it's like if you're naming your yuan ti or a yuan ti cult like group, think about all the sibilant sounds. Lots of S's everywhere. And going back to World of Warcraft again, because like seriously, I've been playing it for about 3 weeks solid, so I've been immersing myself. There are some insectoid races in World of Warcraft, and the way that language is used for them is really, really interesting. So, I mean, whoever they have that does naming things at Blizzard is amazing, I must say.
Maybe it's a whole department.
Probably. They've probably got linguists working on it.
Cunning linguists?
Who knows? So there's, insectoid races, and they use the sibilant sounds, but they contrast it with the plosive. So they take, like, the pops from the Orcish and the Klingon that we've already mentioned, and the hisses. The overall effect when you hear the names is like cockroaches hissing and clicking. And they put together strange to English combinations of consonants, underused ones, to make them feel alien as well. So we've got you'll get names like Kaztik, Kiloruk, but then also like Skyris and Veknilash. So it's all very sort of clicky, hissy.
God bless you.
Yeah, did you ever do Anchorage?
No, that was I started WoW kind of at the very tail end. So when like the gates of Anchorage were opening, I was like level 2 or whatever. So I never got out there.
Yeah, but I started in Burning Crusade and I still run it all the time because I love it. That's got a lot of the cockroachy noises, like the Silithists and Silithid creatures, and
it's got a lot of buggy boys out there, lots of scarab looking folks.
Probably in the last decade, we've seen more manufactured fantasy languages than we've ever seen. Dothraki comes to mind.
Yeah, Valyrian as well. I can't remember if it was the same person that created both of them. But yeah, the linguists that create fantasy languages are incredible. You know, like I said, I've been studying Klingon. It was Mark Okrand who created Klingon on his own, whole language. And it's a proper language because there's not just linguistic rules, but there's like exceptions to the rules, like a natural language would have.
Yes.
It's just wild.
That is, a level, like, you have the chance to make something perfect, right? Like, you have a chance to, like, create a language in a vacuum, but instead they went out of their way to be like, but here's how people would actually fuck it up.
So I was lucky enough to study pre-modern Japanese, which is a lot more complicated than modern Japanese.
Oh, yeah. Regular Japanese is quite straightforward, isn't it?
In the middle of the 19th century, they basically modernized the language and said, we aren't doing it this way anymore, we're doing it this way, here are the rules. And modern Japanese is much more regular because a lot of it is manufactured that way.
That's like Newspeak or whatever. Like the entire government was just like, here, we're doing it this way now.
And then they added 2 other scripts. So they're like, well, hiragana was there for a while, but katakana for loanwords. And hiragana are 2 transcription languages alphabets that transcribe sound phonetics. And they have it's the exact same scheme. You have like kaki, kuke, ko, tachi, tsutse, to, nani, nune, no. So it's the exact same amount of characters, but they just have 2 different scripts for it. These are our native words, and these are our loan words.
Interesting. And isn't there another...
So some of it's complicated, and some of it's not.
There's another set of symbology that's also just words, right? Like,
in order to read Japanese, you need to know katakana, hiragana, and kanji. Kanji is originally the traditional Chinese character.
Ah, I'm learning so much tonight.
Anyway,
it's educational. I mean, the good thing with the Japanese language is, like, if you see like a hiragana or a katakana, you know exactly how it's going to sound. Yeah. Whereas, like, in English, you can have bow, tough, cough.
Yeah. Well, the thing about
and it's
kanji,
all the same letters,
is you get the Japanese, like the traditional Japanese pronunciation, and it will often have a second pronunciation, which is like the Chinesified pronunciation. Sometimes it'll even have a third pronunciation, so you're kind of just like guessing with I have a really hard time with kanji. I'm not the only one, I know. So yeah, there's things that are very easy, which is like, let me read chocolate. Okay, that's chocolate. Great. But like, let me read that kanji. No, not gonna happen. Anyway, at some point I want to talk about Belter, but talk about your stuff.
Oh, Lang Belter? Okay.
Uh-huh.
I wonder when that's gonna come up.
I guess it'll come up right now. One of my favorite current created languages is Lang Belta, which is from The Expanse, originally a sci-fi show, now on Amazon Prime. And there is a sort of a group of people, societies that develop away from Earth, but they originated on Earth, so you have a lot of mixing of Earth tongues, if you will. But what I think is really interesting about Lang Belta is that it has a manual component. Mm-hmm. And I'm not aware of any other language that's so involved in the manual component. Like, you'll see sometimes, like, people, I think Klingons salute
Kapla
at certain times, but I don't think it's like as nuanced as these sort of manual. Basically, they're making gestures that have meaning. And what's fascinating about it is the nod is that, because we're out in space, so in order to communicate in suits where you might not have radio connection for some reason, you need to communicate with gestures. So it's, as far as I have seen, it's like a limited, like there's less gestures than there are words. There isn't like a 1-for-1. Mm-hmm. And it's very important words that you get gestures for, or like like not commands, but like indicators, or, you know, everything's okay, or go forward, or, you know, stop, or things like that. And so you can use those gestures in regular conversation to add meaning and layers and nuances. The one that comes to mind is sort of like the fuck you, which people have translated as get a hole in your spacesuit and suffocate. So it's like
Sabakawawala.
Okay. Wow, Air, I'm impressed.
Just wait till Saturday.
It's like the okay, but it's like sideways. So your 3 fingers are pointing like over your other shoulder. Mm-hmm. And then it's sort of like a gesture, like a short gesture towards the person, which is sort of indicating that air is escaping from a hole in your suit. So I really like it. Anyway, that's my little digression.
I've also been, studying this language because I'm running a Expanse one-shot on Saturday with Jerika and crew. Yeah, the other neat part about the somatic kind of elements of it is that, like, because they tried to bring in elements of used language, it did start as a pidgin language.
Well, it's a Creole by the sound of it, isn't it? Because it's like that.
Yeah, so it's...
When it goes beyond pidgin
Yes.
to an actual language of its own, it becomes
Yes,
Creole.
and that's exactly what happened. It starts as a pidgin language, so it's just a lot of, like, the very important words, hence why there aren't gestures for every word, because as it kind of morphed into a full Creole language and became a language of its own, they didn't need to map, I guess, every single word to a gesture anymore, just the ones that were useful for being in a vacuum suit in space.
Yeah, it's interesting that they've incorporated like a gesture language as part of it, though.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool.
It is really cool.
Yeah.
I cannot recommend The Expanse enough, specifically, Mazz, to you.
One day, when I get time,
Yeah.
and everything isn't on fire.
One day.
Probably. One.
Maybe one day everything. I mean, if it was on fire, it'd be warmer in here. But you know.
So what can we sort of take from what we've talked about as advice for people?
I was going to get to some advice in a moment, but I have a little bit more.
Sure.
Obviously, words and language influence the naming convention. So, the trope is with dwarven culture is that they are miners, work with or metal or stone, things like that. So, given the fantasy convention of compounding words, we get and also another trope is that they like the alcohol. We get names like Silver Keg, Steel Axe, Copperbeard, Gold Pick, things like that. Elves are seen as nature-loving, druidic, mellow, loving animals, tending to things. So you get things like Grove Walker, Greenleaf, Forest Keeper for names there. Something I also noticed, back to WoW again as an example, some cultures have onomatopoeic words. So,
Bang.
like ogres. Ogres are, I mean, we're not going to go into how ableist this is, but they are seen as less intelligent. So they use onomatopoeic names like thunk, plod, bop, chunk, stuff like that, because you know they just want like quick, easy, rhythmic words. The conceit is that ogres couldn't think of a longer word or a more descriptive word,
And yet some of them are mages. Very interesting.
Well, it's complicated. I don't know. I hate playing it, even though I love playing it. I hate it at the same time. There's a problem. Something our good friend Matt Will Jackson pointed out to me. Everyone remembers Darmok and Jalad at Sanagra, and that's another use of language to consider. That was always such groundbreaking, and everyone remembers it because it's like no one had ever thought before about a culture that would communicate in a symbolic way with references that aren't understood by everybody.
I would love to see how they became a warp-capable species. Could you imagine trying to explain warp physics in analogy and metaphor? The bubble, it spreads open. Except it would have to be somebody's specific's bubble.
Oh, the ripple grows.
The ripple grows.
Like a stone in the water or
So
something.
many needless deaths. Anyway. Sorry, Mazz.
No. My summing up really is name things literally. If you're really stuck for a name, just be really literal about it. You think about things in the world, people name them so literally. Like, if you go around England and look at the names of places, we're rubbish. We are absolutely rubbish here. And we call things like, I don't know, Big Hill.
It's funny because it's true.
Yeah.
I'm sure we have a big hill over here too. At least one.
Yeah, so many places here, if you go back in Old English far enough, basically mean like rubbish tip by the well or something.
Yeah.
If you look up your... So, and I think that's where Discworld gets it, like, kind of spot on there. Terry Pratchett called things like that.
It's true.
And they gave it that unique flavour.
Yep. But it's interesting because at least in my experience, those are like the town names, and then there are not society names, but like country-ish names that are nods to names in the world, which I always think is very interesting.
Like 4X.
Yes. XXXX. 4X.
I don't know if that translates to you as well. Did you ever have 4X lager?
No.
Right, that's what the joke about that one is.
I see. Is that related to like Australia by any chance?
Yes, it was an imported lager from Australia that was big over here.
I see.
In like the 80s, and there was like adverts on television and stuff.
Gotcha.
And it was called 4X.
I thought because like it was sort of foreign parts that like they didn't know what to name it, so they just put X's on it.
That's equally an answer. Yeah, that could equally be an answer.
And I'm sure there's, these meanings are all in there. Things like Uberwald like comes to mind, where like getting that I think it's an umlaut. I apologize. Yeah. Like getting that in there at the beginning, Uberwald. Like it's such a feature of German that you're kind of defining it with that word. And Uberwald means something specific. It's like
I can't think what
something forest.
Is. Oh, over forest.
Over forest, yes, indeed.
Or high forest.
Yeah, so like, it's somebody knew German. Yeah.
But it's just like being literal again, isn't it? It's
so
like
now
it's
I have to like ask you like every single name in Discworld, like what the joke is. Anyway, it's fine. What is the ram top? So the ram top's anything special?
Yeah, so name things literally, like Uberwald.
Yeah. Just
in a foreign language. Use existing words as a base for what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So like in World of Warcraft, in the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, it was very based on Scandinavia. So they used a lot of like Scandinavian roots, a lot of endings, and lots of like patterns of like consonants that would be in there. Like be mindful that you're not just like appropriating stuff to make a culture sound cool or a certain way, because that's often where WoW gets it wrong. Like they're good at naming it, but then they're appropriating, and that's not great. But it can give you a good foundation to look at how things work. Think about the sounds of the word and whether you want it to sound like, sharp and shocking, or like gentle and slow, and use those consonants that match the sound you want. Think about onomatopoeia. Think about calling your character occasional table, because their parents think that furniture that doesn't have to be furniture all the time is quite fancy, and they want your child to be fancy. Do things like that.
Right? I mean, it makes, like, in a world where not everyone owns an occasional table.
It's only occasionally a table. It's there,
The rest of the time,
what's it doing the rest of
it's an assassin.
Apparently so. There's lots of different ways to like inspire your naming, I think.
And I think there's ways you can also speak to the tone of your game. Or like, if we were playing like a serious, I don't know, Ravnica game, I don't know if you would call your character occasional table. It might be,
I would not.
Right. So the words that you choose and the order in which you choose to put them together can say a lot about the tone of what your players are in for.
You definitely set the tone for the game by calling the town Old Og.
Old Og.
Old Og.
Old Og. Yeah. You're in it now. That's what the sign said underneath. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, and compounding as well. Stick words together all the time. That's a big fantasy thing. Do it.
Hyphens are fun.
Apostrophes or apostrophes in. Use weird consonant combinations to make it sound alien, foreign. I made myself up a spreadsheet a while back that I just put loads of like nouns that felt really like fantasy-ish, and then loads of verbs. And every so often I just stick two together to come up with a name.
Do you happen to remember any examples?
Oh, I'm going to see if I've still got it. I should still have it if it's in my Google
Let's see.
Drive.
Let's check in with Air. Air, are you here?
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
You're still with us.
I am here.
Great.
I do still have it. This is good. So, yeah, I've got things like elements, like air and dust and earth. There's animals like bear and crow and raven, and same thing, but snake. There's adjectives like dark and small and sharp, magical words like hex and shadow. So you just like smash them together, and you can have like and then like you could have someone called Shadow Whisper because you put together shadow with whisper. You have a place called Blue Mountain City because it's a city on a blue mountain.
Haha.
You could have the what can I put that word with? I was just looking at bone, and then I looked at life, and I'm like, I can't say life bone because that's something else.
You have.
Yeah, I still have. But you could put like dragon bone.
Haha.
That's pretty cool. That works.
And imagine a society where it isn't just 2 words, it's 3. And that would be a different flavor.
Because, I mean, if you, like, think about it, even in Star Wars, you've got Skywalker.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Or in, like, D&D, you've got Neverwinter. Because it's Neverwinter.
And Luke is always walking on the sky.
So, yeah, you can have, like, Paladin Brightsword.
I already ate
something like
them.
that.
Very specific person in my brain.
A very specific, terrible person in my brain.
Oh.
Just smush words together. It's a good tradition in fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, language is really a tool at the heart of it. So why not use it?
I try not to get too hung up about, like, spelling and grammar because the purpose of language is to communicate something. And regardless of your spelling, grammar, what words you've used, if you've communicated something effectively and correctly, it doesn't matter how it's done. Oh, also, like you were saying about the expense, I've written down, so, because I forgot, because we got sidetracked at Darmok and Gillard, consider maybe your character's culture communicates only in songs, so they have to sing their name.
Aha.
Or they use sign language, so they don't actually have a written down spoken name.
I played I hopefully will play her again. I have a Batfolk in one of Leaf's games, and
I remember this is cool.
Yeah,
this
and
is so cool.
her name I gotta write it down. I gotta decipher my cipher. So her name is Glim Junie, but she writes it Glim Junie and then period and then IUNRWILB. And that's not her last name. That's just Glim Junie upside down. So that the bats who are upside down or whatever opposite of her at that moment can read her name. And I thought that was really cool.
I loved it when you told me about it. Yeah. I thought that was so clever.
Because sometimes bats are upside down or right side up.
But that's exactly the sort of thing, people can be thinking about for, like, homebrewing stuff, cultures and characters and things. So, yeah. I hope it was inspiring.
Yeah, I like it.
Go out and name stuff, people.
You can be that No Mancy wizard you always wanted to be.
Mm-hmm. Know them true names.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe your character has a false name as well as a true name because of the power of a true name.
What if someone tries to cast, like, an onomancy spell on you and they use your name and it doesn't work? Like, are they just a shitty wizard or are you in denial about what your real name is?
Maybe you're learning about yourself.
Maybe.
Oh no, Mancy! Oh, real Mancy!
And
Anyway.
And on that note,
that's the episode title, isn't it? Oh no,
Mancy. Mancy, no, I can change.
I named my character Mancy for sure. That's the new name. Okay. Yeah.
That's how you name it.
And that's been
Onomancy.
your episode of Insight Check. Yes, your I dedicate this episode to you, listener. You know who you are. Yes,
You know your
you knew
true
it all
name.
along.
I dedicated to Jerika, Air's new alter ego.
Jerika.
Fusion.
Anyway, so thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed your episode. We would also like to thank Vin Svept for the song Never Stand Alone that we use on the episodes. And we'd like to thank Burnham, BERNUMMM, for our faces. That we use all over the interwebs.
Because you go, when you see those good faces. Baby Yoda.
Good.
I love
That's
the Baby
also
Yoda.
our brand, for sure. What else? Oh, yes. Please leave us reviews and ratings, if you will. We would appreciate it.
But not bad ones.
We also have a Discord, and you can find us on Twitter and then slither your way into our Discord. Our Twitter handle is Insight Check Pod, and I believe we might have the Discord link in the description, possibly. If not, you can just ask us. It's fine.
Who knows, because Air's dealing with the Twitter, and it could be just vor jokes everywhere.
It could, yeah. He could have just like wiped
Puns.
out the whole description that we had before.
I hate it.
It's a completely different thing. Yeah, I thought maybe. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone. This has been Insight Check, answering your cues. No cues from our collective A's. This
Was.
Insight
Check. One of our more helpful and useful and coherent episodes, I think.
Sorry, everyone's breaking up, so I'm kind of only 50%. Hold on one second. I'm going to do a thing. Maybe.
Ooh, you can do magic. Boo-doo, boo-doo. You can have anything that you desire. Magic. Boo-doo, boo-doo. I know you're the one who can put out the fire. Anyway.
This is a great intermission. I'm loving it. We should do this every episode.
This should be, yeah. When I change the server and Jerika sings what will inevitably be the Easter egg.
Inevitably, yes.